Hello class, Mr. Hall here, and we are talking about Chapter 8 in our ENT 220 leadership class. And Chapter 8 is talking about charismatic and transformational leadership. And I have added some notes to the standard PowerPoint, and I also included that on your weekly module so that you can look at some of the additional things which are all in red as we go through. So we're going to talk about charismatic and transformational leadership. It's a very popular area of leadership study right now because of things like social media, the addition of 24-hour news networks. All of this has added to people looking at leaders as more charismatic leaders, which we're very familiar with that term, and also with transformational leaders, these people who transform organizations and cultures as well. So we're just going to compare a little bit between the two. Charismatic leadership, under the term charisma, as you can see on your screen, it's a Greek word. It means divinely inspired gift, such as the ability to perform miracles or predict future events. So things that would fall under these types of leaders would be a novel and appealing vision, emotional appeal to values, expression of high confidence and optimism, people who are self-sacrificers, unconventional behavior and methods, and they even just demonstrate some exceptional abilities as well. So all of these and combinations of these factors give the followers an impression that this person is a charismatic leader. So again, like I had said just a couple minutes ago, but what you see in yellow are just some additional things. Again, don't use these as a supplement, as a replacement for your book, but use it as a supplement for your book. So when we talk about charismatic leader, their influence, process, and meeting variables, what are the things that they do that draw people to them? The first thing that's listed is the personal identification. So oftentimes followers identify with the charismatic leader. There's an identity to that person. I think about famous athletes. People identified with these athletes, people like Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods. People tend to identify with them. They wear their gear. They wear similar things that they wear. They'll wear their number with their name on the back of the jersey. That's all personal identification with the leader. Number two is a social identification. This is people who regard membership in a group organization as important to their identity. So this organization is who I am. I am and fill in the blank of a particular organization or identify with certain people. Number three is internalization. Followers embrace the leader's mission as being worthy of their commitment. So they follow it. Again, charismatic leadership can be a very positive thing. Can also be a very negative thing, can be a very dark thing, right? So we see that, people that embrace the mission of bad people, like a Charles Manson or an Adolf Hitler, for example, might be somebody who internalizes it and is committed to their mission, even if it's a bad mission. Number four, self-efficacy and collective efficacy. Self-efficacy is the willingness to expend more effort and persist over obstacles. So these are people who will overcome obstacles. And group efficacy is people are more willing to cooperate to carry out a mission. So they work together to meet these missions because they believe in the mission. Number five, impression management. Charismatic leaders promote a positive image of themselves and also those of who they represent. There's a bit of an arrogance that can be there, saying that we're better or smarter than everyone else and everybody needs to catch up to us. And so there can be in some instances a sense of arrogance, or that we're more positive, we're better people for some reason than others. And then number six, an emotional contagion. Leaders who are positive and enthusiastic often influence the enthusiasm of others for that work as well. So people that are enthusiastic, followers tend to want to be around them, and they tend to be enthusiastic as well. So when people are excited about certain things, then they get excited about certain things. I see that a lot in my entrepreneur classes. I'm very excited about my entrepreneur program, and I believe it's a really, really great program. And I know a number of you guys are not part of that program, but some of you are. And a lot of times my students will say that they feel the enthusiasm that I have for the program. That makes them excited about it. And that can be a very, very good thing and very effective. There are, on this slide, dysfunctional attributes of a narcissistic charismatic leader. I won't go through all of them, but a lot of times they don't pay a lot of attention to details. They can be a bit impulsive. They can create disruptive rivalries. They can make exaggerated claims about things. I mean, after all, Charles Manson believed he was the son of God, and would say that. David Koresh of the Branch Davidian cult did the same thing in the 1990s, claimed to be the son of God, or have an inside communication with God that others don't have. So they make these claims when they're narcissistic that can be a big problem. And that becomes a big issue for charismatic leaders. There's also situations that will lend themselves to charismatic leaders. Oftentimes charismatic leaders will jump in when there's a crisis. So that's usually when they jump in and they will emerge as somebody that ends up being a leader in a crisis. Attributional ambiguity, when followers can't determine if a leader is a good choice or a bad choice, then they tend to use charisma as a gauge for leader selection. So oftentimes people, even think about it this way, even when people do an interview and you're interviewing people for a particular job position, and you have people with very similar qualifications and very similar resume and background, and then you have to choose one. Oftentimes they'll try to choose the one that's more likable. Sometimes that actually even plays into their physical appearance. If they tend to be more beautiful or more handsome, sometimes they're selected over a person who's a little bit more plain. So that can play into things a lot. So when followers aren't really sure whether this person's the right person to follow or not, it's the enthusiastic, charismatic leader that will usually win them over. Number 4, their interaction with the leader. The more the followers interact with the leaders, the more that these charismatic leaders have an influence and an effect. So the more connection they have with people, that's why you see a lot of these charismatic leaders will have lots of open meetings, will have press conferences, things like that will try to get people to follow them. The book talks more about the effects of charismatic leaders. There's lots of research about charismatic leaders and what makes a charismatic leader. Of course, society and culture changes that over time. And so what we consider a charismatic leader now would probably not have been a charismatic leader, in my childhood, or certainly not in my parents' and grandparents' childhood, and yours either. And so as time goes on, what we consider popular, exciting, charismatic, would not be necessarily charismatic and exciting now. So as we do more and more research, it also moves around in regards to the type of culture and time in which we live as well. The book goes on, and again, I'm not going to go through each one of these slides, but there's more about charismatic leadership. There's more information about charismatic leadership, just kind of giving you an overview of charismatic leadership. The second part of the book talks of this particular chapter talks about what we call transformational leaders. Transformational leadership is a little bit different than charismatic leadership, and it describes how effective leaders inspire and transform followers by appealing to their ideals and to their emotions. So a transformational leader, oftentimes a charismatic leader, is also a transformational leader. So they do, leader behaviors are idealized influences, behavior that increases follower identification with the leader. Again, people who set examples, people who show an over amount of dedication and self-sacrifice. Number 2, the influence process. Inspirational leadership links the task to the follower's values and ideals. Notice we go back to, we do this because we identify with this value for you. The trust in the leadership is very high, and we embrace the leader's values. We see this a lot in religions. We see this a lot in societal, cultural identifications. So any type of a church, pastors certainly would fall into inspirational leaders. People who are involved in different organizations, whether they're good or bad, also have this influence process. And then number 3, the leadership situation. In a dynamic, unstable environment with an increase in need for change, leaders are encouraged to be flexible and innovative. So that flexibility and innovation will be used, just like I said in the charismatic leadership. Leaders will use crises in order to step in and influence, and then they help people transform. They'll say, see, we have this crisis because of this situation, and I've stepped in now as a charismatic leader, and I have answers to that problem, whether they're good or not. And people will say, yes, there's the answer, and they will transform their thinking and follow those charismatic leaders because they demonstrated that they can influence a particular situation. The book talks again about comparing the two. Again, they can be very somewhat interchangeable. It's my belief from my study of this that the charismatic leader is someone who also is a transformational leader. To me, I don't think that the opposite is true. So I don't think that someone starts as a transformational leader and then becomes charismatic. I really believe from what I've read and what I've studied is that the charismatic leader, if the opportunity is right, if the leaders are right, if the situation is right, oftentimes then can transform things as well. This is why, again, you see politicians that will come in and they'll say, we want a new society. We were trying to change society. And there's obviously a lot of people that will hear that and that frightens them because they don't want as much change or radical change where other people do. I think we see that quite a bit in our political society at this point in our nation's history. We see a lot of people that are trying to look at ways to institutionally transform our country. And for some parts of the population, that can be quite frightening. And for other parts of the population, they tend to embrace that. But again, I think charismatic and transformational kind of go hand in hand. If you're going to be a successful charismatic leader, you have that ability. You're also going to probably transform the way people think and the way people do things. So that's a little bit about chapter 8. Please continue reading. Make sure you're working on your discussion boards. Make sure you're working on your leadership paper, which is coming up very soon. Now that we're in the second half of the semester. And I hope that you're finishing up your exam, and I'll be looking forward to grading those as well. Otherwise, have a great night, and thank you for tuning in. Talk to you soon. Take care.